Assessment has always been at the heart of education, guiding both teachers and students toward a deeper understanding of learning objectives and outcomes. As educational paradigms shift from rote memorization to critical thinking, creativity, and problem solving, the tools we use to evaluate student performance must evolve accordingly. Among these tools, rubrics have emerged as indispensable instruments for transparent, fair, and meaningful assessment. Their role extends far beyond mere grading. Rubrics shape instructional design, clarify expectations, foster self-reflection, and promote consistency in evaluation. To harness their full potential, educators must not only understand what rubrics are, but also how to craft them effectively to support learning and achievement. A rubric, in its simplest form, is a scoring guide that delineates the criteria for evaluating a piece of work or performance. Unlike traditional marking schemes that often reduce assessment to numerical scores or letter grades, rubrics break down complex tasks into component parts, each with clearly defined standards of quality. This granularity enables both instructors and learners to focus on specific aspects of performance, such as organization, creativity, analysis, or technical accuracy. By articulating what constitutes excellence, proficiency, or areas needing improvement, rubrics demystify the grading process and set a roadmap for success. The primary advantage of using rubrics lies in their ability to make assessment transparent. Students often experience anxiety and confusion when they do not understand how their work will be judged. Rubrics counteract this uncertainty by providing detailed descriptions of expectations for each level of performance. When students receive a rubric before beginning an assignment, they can tailor their efforts to meet or exceed the outlined criteria. This transparency empowers learners, fostering a sense of ownership over their work and encouraging self-directed improvement. Furthermore, rubrics serve as communication bridges between teachers and students, reducing disputes about grades and making feedback more constructive and actionable. For instructors, rubrics offer a structured framework that streamlines the grading process and enhances consistency. In large classes or collaborative teaching environments, maintaining fairness across multiple evaluators can be challenging. Rubrics mitigate subjectivity by anchoring judgments to pre-established standards, reducing the influence of personal biases or mood fluctuations. This reliability is especially crucial in high-stakes assessments, where the consequences of inconsistent grading can be significant. Moreover, rubrics save time. Rather than rewriting similar comments or explanations for each student, teachers can refer to the rubric's language, ensuring that feedback is both specific and aligned with learning objectives. Another vital role of rubrics is their capacity to support formative assessment. While summative assessment focuses on evaluating final products or performances, formative assessment is concerned with monitoring progress and guiding improvement throughout the learning process. Well-designed rubrics enable teachers to identify strengths and weaknesses in student work, providing targeted feedback that informs subsequent instruction. For students, rubrics act as diagnostic tools, highlighting areas that require further attention and prompting reflection on their learning strategies. This iterative cycle of assessment, feedback, and revision cultivates a growth mindset and deepens engagement with the subject matter. Rubrics also facilitate self and peer assessment, essential components of learner-centered education. When students use rubrics to evaluate their own or each other's work, they develop critical thinking and metacognitive skills. The act of interpreting criteria, making judgments, and justifying scores encourages learners to internalize standards of quality and become more analytical about their own processes. Peer assessment, guided by rubrics, promotes collaborative learning and exposes students to diverse perspectives, enriching their understanding of the task at hand. Despite their numerous benefits, rubrics are not without challenges. Poorly constructed rubrics can confuse rather than clarify, leading to frustration and disengagement. Overly generic criteria may fail to capture the nuances of complex assignments, while excessively detailed rubrics can overwhelm both teachers and students, reducing flexibility and stifling creativity. To avoid these pitfalls, it is essential to approach rubric design thoughtfully, balancing specificity with adaptability and aligning criteria closely with learning goals. The process of creating an effective rubric begins with a clear articulation of the learning objectives. What knowledge, skills, or dispositions should students demonstrate through the assignment? The answer to this question forms the backbone of the rubric, guiding the selection and definition of assessment criteria. Each criterion should represent a distinct and important aspect of the task, avoiding redundancy and ensuring comprehensive coverage of the intended outcomes. For example, in a research paper assignment, criteria might include thesis clarity, evidence integration, logical organization, citation accuracy, and writing mechanics. Once the criteria are established, the next step is to define performance levels for each one. Most rubrics employ 3 to 5 levels, ranging from exemplary to inadequate. Descriptors for each level should be specific, observable, and measurable, avoiding vague terms like good or poor. Instead, they should illustrate what performance looks like at each stage, using concrete language and examples when possible. For instance, under the criterion evidence integration, an exemplary descriptor might read, consistently integrates relevant, high-quality evidence to support arguments, with insightful analysis that strengthens the thesis. Whereas a developing descriptor might state, integrates some evidence, but analysis is limited or only loosely connected to the thesis. The format of the rubric can vary depending on the nature of the assignment and the preferences of the instructor. Analytic rubrics, the most common type, break the task into separate criteria, each scored independently. This format provides detailed feedback and allows for diagnostic assessment of specific skills or components. Holistic rubrics, by contrast, assess the overall quality of the work as a single score, considering all criteria simultaneously. While holistic rubrics are quicker to use, especially for large-scale assessments, they offer less granular feedback. In some cases, single-point rubrics are employed, listing only the proficient standard for each criterion, with space for individualized comments on how the work exceeds or falls short of expectations. The choice of rubric type should reflect the goals of the assessment and the needs of the learners. Involving students in the creation or refinement of rubrics can further enhance their effectiveness. When learners participate in defining criteria and performance levels, they gain a deeper understanding of the standards and are more likely to internalize them. This collaborative approach also fosters a sense of agency and investment in the assessment process. Teachers might begin by presenting a draft rubric and inviting students to critique or suggest revisions, or by co-constructing criteria based on exemplary samples of student work. Such practices not only improve the quality of the rubric, but also cultivate a classroom culture of shared responsibility and mutual respect. Clarity and accessibility are paramount in rubric design. The language used should be free of jargon and tailored to the developmental level of the students. Each descriptor should communicate expectations unambiguously, minimizing the risk of misinterpretation. Visual layout also matters. A well-organized rubric, with clearly labeled rows and columns, facilitates quick reference and comparison across performance levels. Where appropriate, providing annotated examples of work at each level can further illuminate the standards and help students calibrate their own efforts. Alignment between the rubric and the assignment is critical. Misalignment occurs when the criteria do not accurately reflect the skills or knowledge the task is intended to assess. For instance, if creativity is a stated objective but not included in the rubric, students may neglect this aspect or feel unfairly penalized for its absence. Conversely, including criteria unrelated to the core purpose of the assignment can distract students and dilute the focus of their work. Regularly reviewing and revising rubrics in light of actual student performance and feedback ensures ongoing alignment and relevance. Effective rubrics also balance rigor with flexibility. While it is important to maintain high standards and clear expectations, overly rigid rubrics can constrain creativity and discourage risk-taking. Allowing room for alternative approaches or exceptional work that falls outside predefined categories acknowledges the diversity of student strengths and fosters innovation. Some teachers address this by including an other category or by inviting students to propose additional criteria for unique projects. Flexibility within structure is key to nurturing both excellence and individuality. Feedback is most powerful when it is timely, specific, and actionable. Rubrics facilitate this by breaking down feedback into manageable components, allowing students to pinpoint exactly where they excelled and where they need to improve. However, simply handing back a scored rubric is not enough. Teachers should supplement rubric-based scores with narrative comments that contextualize the ratings and offer concrete suggestions for growth. Encouraging students to reflect on the feedback, set goals, and revise their work based on rubric criteria closes the feedback loop and maximizes the impact of assessment. Technology has expanded the possibilities for rubric use and design. Many learning management systems, LMS, now include built-in rubric tools that allow for easy creation, sharing, and scoring of rubrics. Digital rubrics can streamline the grading process, facilitate data collection and analysis, and support longitudinal tracking of student progress. Some platforms even enable students to self-assess or peer-assess using digital rubrics, integrating assessment seamlessly into the learning environment. As with any tool, however, technology should serve pedagogical purposes rather than dictate them, thoughtful design and implementation remain essential. Rubrics have applications beyond the classroom as well. In professional and vocational education, rubrics are used to assess competencies and performance in real-world contexts, such as clinical practice, artistic production, or workplace simulations. They provide a common language for evaluating complex skills and facilitate communication among educators, employers, and learners. In research and program evaluation, rubrics help ensure that judgments about quality and effectiveness are systematic and replicable. Their versatility and adaptability make rubrics valuable tools across educational settings and disciplines. The process of developing effective rubrics is iterative and reflective. Initial versions may reveal gaps, ambiguities, or unintended consequences when applied to actual student work. Soliciting feedback from colleagues and students, analyzing patterns in rubric scores, and observing how the rubric shapes learning and behavior are all part of the refinement process. Over time, rubrics should evolve to better serve the needs of both teachers and learners, supporting continuous improvement in assessment practices. One of the most profound impacts of rubrics is their ability to shift the focus of assessment from judgment to learning. When students view rubrics as guides rather than verdicts, they are more likely to engage in self-assessment, seek feedback, and strive for mastery. Teachers, in turn, can use rubrics to diagnose learning needs, differentiate instruction, and celebrate diverse forms of achievement. This transformation requires a cultural shift in how assessment is perceived, not as a final reckoning, but as an integral part of the learning journey. Rubrics also support equity in assessment by making expectations explicit and consistent for all students. In diverse classrooms, where learners bring varied backgrounds, experiences, and prior knowledge, rubrics help level the playing field. By clarifying what counts as high-quality work and how it will be evaluated, rubrics reduce the likelihood of unconscious bias and ensure that all students have equal opportunities to succeed. However, true equity also demands that rubrics themselves are culturally responsive and inclusive, reflecting the values, perspectives, and strengths of all learners. In sum, rubrics are far more than administrative tools for assigning grades. They are dynamic instruments for shaping learning, guiding instruction, and fostering growth. Their effectiveness depends on thoughtful design, clear alignment with learning objectives, and meaningful engagement with students. By making assessment transparent, consistent, and purposeful, rubrics transform grading from a source of anxiety and ambiguity into a catalyst for reflection, dialogue, and achievement. To create effective grading tools, educators must invest time and care in every stage of rubric development. Begin by clarifying the purpose of the assessment and identifying the most important criteria for success. Define clear, specific descriptors for each performance level, using language that is accessible and meaningful to students. Choose a format, analytic, holistic, or single point that best suits the assignment and learning goals. Involve students in the process whenever possible, fostering a sense of ownership and shared responsibility. Ensure that the rubric is visually clear, logically organized, and aligned with both the task and broader curricular outcomes. Regularly review and refine rubrics based on feedback and experience, remaining open to change and improvement. Use rubrics not only to assign grades, but to provide formative feedback, guide self and peer assessment, and inform instructional decisions. Embrace technology where it enhances efficiency and engagement, but keep pedagogy at the forefront. Strive for balance between rigor and flexibility, detail and clarity, standardization and individuality. Ultimately, the goal of assessment is not merely to measure learning, but to promote it. Rubrics, when thoughtfully designed and skillfully implemented, serve as powerful catalysts for deeper understanding, higher achievement, and lifelong growth. By making expectations explicit, feedback actionable, and evaluation fair, rubrics elevate the practice of assessment to its highest purpose, supporting every learner on the path to excellence.